Did you know that the people who opposed Islam, Prophet Muhammad and his early followers, ended up taking over the philosophy and being the first kingdom, monarchy, dynasty that spread Islam all over the world? So I'm a Sunni Muslim. I grew up in a very progressive household. I have a deep relationship with Islam and the Quran. And when I read the Quran, and have been reading the Quran for the last 15 or so years, I have found this incredibly beautiful message that is in line with ideas of sustainability, that is deeply, deeply egalitarian and looks out for the oppressed, that fights for things like justice and emphasizes mercy, and shares ideas that would be considered very, very modern or ahead of their time in regards to science and medicine and all kinds of disciplines. So when I read the Quran and see these messages, I can't help but wonder, how did we get to the version of Islam that is practiced today by most Muslims? The version that's deeply mired in rituals, that's, for lack of a better term, kind of lost the point, and lost touch with the original ideas in the Quran. And how is that message in any way, shape, or form able to be misinterpreted into the fundamentalist versions of Islam that we see today? So in order to figure this out, I've been reading a bunch of books, and a couple of my favorite books are by this author named Leslie Hazelton. One of them is called The First Muslim. It's a biography, beautifully written, super literary, kind of a page turner about Prophet Muhammad's life, biography of Prophet Muhammad. The second one is this book called After the Prophet, the epic story of the Shia-Sunni split. And this second book traces what happens after Prophet Muhammad dies and how Islam becomes what we know today. So in order to understand what happens and how we get the version of Islam we have today, we kind of have to go back to the time of Prophet Muhammad. So Prophet Muhammad comes of age in modern day Mecca in 7th century Arabia. And in the 7th century, there are different tribes, and some of them are nomadic, some have settled within different regions that have different responsibilities, and people belong to these tribes. Prophet Muhammad is an orphan, but he grows up in a tribe called the Quraysh. Now, the way the tribes worked at this time, they had majority clans and minority clans. And in Prophet Muhammad's tribe, the Quraysh, he was part of a minority clan called the Bani Hashim. The majority clan within his tribe was a group of people called the Umayyads. And not only were the Umayyads powerful and influential and large in size within his own tribe, the Umayyads were kind of like the oligarchy or the 1% or the billionaires of 7th century Arabia. They were the elites of Mecca. They controlled the trade routes and they controlled the religious pilgrimage site, what is known as modern day Kaaba. Now, at that time, the Kaaba was the religious pilgrimage site for the pagans, which later was converted after the spread of Islam into a monotheistic pilgrimage site for the Muslims based on the message and revelation in the Quran. But one of the things that the Quraysh were known to do, specifically the Umayyads, was that they would charge pilgrims a fee in order to visit this pilgrimage site. And when it came to the trade routes and the wealth within the region, the Umayyads were known to exploit labor and take advantage of folks and really hoard wealth, okay? So this is the background in which Prophet Muhammad is getting the revelation of Islam. And you read the Quran and there are these ideas of siding with the oppressed, ensuring that there's redistribution of wealth, that there are solidarity economies or mutual aid, that orphans and widows and women and other people who do not have means, immigrants, foreigners, are taken care of. And over again, there's this reminder of this idea that spirituality is not to be gatekept by a few. Instead, Islam is a philosophy where man and God, so humanity and God, have a direct relationship. You don't need an intercessor. You don't need to pay a fee to anybody. So this is the message that comes to Prophet Muhammad, right? And obviously, it's threatening to the oligarchy of the Umayyads. They're like, hell no, you cannot and will not take our power away from us. And initially, they're just kind of like, this Muhammad guy, he's not going to get any traction. No way. We're just too powerful. And Arabs at this time, they're people of habit. They're creatures of habit. They've been doing things the way their forefathers have been doing things. You know, they have a tribal mentality. Nowhere are they going to listen to this guy Muhammad. Unfortunately for the Umayyads, Prophet Muhammad's message starts to spread like crazy, and he gains a following of early Muslims. And as these early Muslims start following Prophet Muhammad and start demanding reforms from the Umayyads and the Meccans at the time and start fighting for a more just society, the Umayyads start actively persecuting Muhammad's followers and these early Muslims. They do things like prevent them from having a livelihood, prevent them from access to food. They literally start throwing stones at them in the street. They make their lives hell. So Prophet Muhammad gets a revelation from God in the Quran that he and his followers can migrate in a form of self-exile from Mecca to nearby Medina. Him and his followers move to Medina. During this time, he establishes a really just Muslim state. A number of things happen. Islam continues to spread beyond Arabia and specifically into Mecca, and more people start to accept this philosophy. It really, really appeals to the disenfranchised, the oppressed, the poor. Eventually, enough time passes and Islam has spread to a level that Prophet Muhammad is able to peacefully return to Mecca and take over Mecca. And some of these Umayyads who originally opposed Prophet Muhammad, in some cases violently in wars where they killed early Muslims, did things like eat their livers and body parts, just absolutely wild, bloodthirsty stuff, some of which is verified, some of which is questionable and controversial. So anyway, Prophet Muhammad comes back and he wants to take kind of the merciful route. He gives them the option to accept Islam. And some of these early opponents, some of these staunch early opponents end up taking him up on that because it allows them to maintain their influence. Some of them are actually sincere in wanting to accept Islam. And, you know, taking him up on that is a better option than completely losing influence and not being part of this new version of the state. Two of those people are this guy named Abu Sufyan, one of the most well-known elites at the time, one of Muhammad's biggest opponents, and his wife Hind, who was one of the people who ate the liver of an early Muslim soldier. And they have a son named Muawiyah. Okay. So now time passes. Prophet Muhammad is on his deathbed. He's about to die, and Prophet Muhammad does not name a successor. And there's kind of a dispute among early Muslims, especially Prophet Muhammad's companions, about why he doesn't name a successor. A bunch of people, led by the first caliph, Abu Bakr, one of the Prophet's earliest companions, believe that the reason Prophet Muhammad doesn't name a successor is he believes that decisions like that should be made by consensus, essentially democratically. Among the early Muslims, they should get to choose their leader, that Islam does not believe in power passing through lineage. And so, you know, of course, he wasn't going to pick somebody within his family. There is another group of people who believe that the relatives of Prophet Muhammad, specifically Ali, his son-in-law, married to his daughter, should be the ones to succeed him. And there's a division among why they believe that. Some people believe because Ali is actually just an incredibly high integrity individual. He would be great at governing an early Muslim state. He was very close to Prophet Muhammad. Others believe it's because there is something divine in the lineage of the Prophet, even though the message of the Quran kind of pushes back against this. Regardless, what ends up happening is Abu Bakr becomes the first caliph after Prophet Muhammad's passing. Then there's a second caliph, Umar, and a third caliph, Uthman. And Uthman is the first Umayyad caliph. Uthman belongs to the group of people who originally ruled Mecca. This is to be continued in the next video.